Good afternoon to everybody, and welcome to the roundtable discussion on the social dimension of the EU. It's a big topic that we will be tackling today. My name is Ismo, Grönroos-Saikkala, and I'm working as an economic advisor within the European semester process, which is an annual cycle of economic policy coordination in the EU, and the social pillar and the social aspects of Europe are getting more and more important for that process, and we certainly come back to those issues later on. Now, I would also like to, before going into the content, thank for the organizers for having organized this discussion. It is a very timely one, and I'll also say something more about the timeliness of the discussion in a few moments, but really great that you have organized the discussion and invited such a group of knowledgeable people from Nordic countries. To start with, I don't know how many of you still remember the economic crisis that started about 10 years ago. It really is 10 years ago almost. Feels like it was only yesterday because it's been all in the headlines and everywhere during the past years. And during those first years, 3 to 5 years of the after the crisis, we could very clearly see that the policymakers were focusing mainly on fiscal and monetary stability, while at the same time simultaneously upgrading the European fiscal policy rules. So a very tough work. Now, we can see that that has led to some useful results. The debts are shrinking. The public deficits are down to where they should be on the basis of the Stability and Growth Pact. And we also have new mechanisms in order to follow actively the possible macroeconomic imbalances in the member states. So we are better prepared for the next crisis to come, and I think we all believe that the next crisis will come. However, the crisis left a very important and heavy social cost with which the many member states are dealing still. And of course that was a part that also led to political instability in many of the EU's countries. And Brexit was certainly the final show of which made us all believe that this is really something we have to take seriously. What the crisis also showed was that countries that had strong social models and social protection systems, they survived better than countries where these aspects are not that well developed. And these systems protected them, citizens and families and companies and entire societies from falling apart. And thus it provided for an easier new start for companies and people after, for example, after long unemployment. Now, during the recent years you have seen that the Commission has been active in making proposals, discussion documents, publishing discussion documents, new legislation even, and new roadmap for the rest of the Commission to go ahead in developing further the EU. This is particularly related with, that is relevant to us, I think, is the EMU and the social pillar. I'd like to mention a few concrete proposals, and which also might be useful to discuss today when looking at what how the Nordic countries should position themselves in the future changes. One is that the Commission proposed a structural reform assistance to member states that need it. It is already up and running, and the first results show that there are countries, like Nordic countries, that are ready to guide and help countries that need to do their structural reforms, and other countries that are very willingly taking on board those guidance and good ideas to develop the systems. And that's clearly the reason there is that those countries that had done their structural reforms in time survived the crisis better than the others. Now the second issue that is of interest and is a proposal for stabilization function, for example, a European investment protection scheme. There is a European employment reinsurance scheme and a rainy day fund, with the idea that when a member state faces an external shock, an asymmetric one, which is not because of their own policies, but caused due to problems in world economy or whatever it might be, could then be helped by the whole Union and all the countries rather than leaving these people and their governments alone. Now, third proposal is a convergence instrument for pre-accession assistance to member states that are working towards the euro adoption, and that the idea being that all member states should be part of euro, should be part of EMU, and should also get the assistance in order to comply with the criteria, which would make again the union stronger. And then the fourth that we are going to discuss today is the European social pillar, which is supposed to be endorsed in the social summit on the 17th of November. And of course, when and if that will be endorsed, it will mean that the concrete legislation and other actions must follow thereof. So there again, today's discussion at best gives us some ideas what the direction for that kind of, for those concrete actions should be, rather than pamphlets. Next step, that second step that I would say on top of the social summit as to the future, I would like to mention the 6th December, which is the date when the Commission makes proposals, concrete proposals, and I've seen some of them, very detailed proposals on the development of European Monetary Union. And that's of course very much linked with social aspects, because the question then immediately comes, what is the role of social Europe within the EMU? What is the role of social aspects within the semester, and that kind of concrete questions. And then the third date that I'd like to mention is September 2018, when the Commission at least plans currently to enhance the use of qualified majority voting in social matters. And that would of course change drastically the way we do business in social matters in Europe, if that would work. So there are three concrete timelines relevant for today's discussion as well, because if you have ideas and the Nordic member states think that's the way we should develop it, the better the Union will be also ready to act when the time comes. But now today's question is, what does the social Europe mean for the Nordic member states? Is it about good practice and recommendations, or is it peer pressure issues, things that are done to some degree already today? Or is it even legislation and binding minimum standards as the social partners are proposing? And in which concrete issues, so in that case, if so? Or should there even be, or should even sanctions be considered as in the economic coordination? And what could that give? Now, of course, then financing issues and many other complex issues will be in picture when we start talking about it. But I think with these words, I'd like to finish the content-related part I wanted to address you with, and then just say you a few words about today's program. You have seen the program, so I don't need to run through in detail, but I'd just like to say that you probably know that this will be webcasted, and there are already hundreds of people following us on the internet from ministries, so welcome to those colleagues as well. Secondly, when we go ahead with the presentation and keynotes here, we have discussed that, and we thought that it would be nice that we keep it informal and we keep it a dialogue format, so you will have a possibility of addressing immediately after the keynote, each keynote, with a couple of questions or comments that you hopefully and certainly will have a lot. So keep that in mind and be ready to ask tough questions from our expert. And then coffee break, we take it when it comes, but about the time that is mentioned here, more Central European way this time. But I'm aware that coffee break we should have today, so at some point, that's for sure. And then we come back from the coffee break, fresh and strong, and we will have the roundtable where we will have two more keynotes or addresses from two other experts before we go into a discussion. And then sometime 16:15 or a bit earlier, a bit later. Oh no, let's say latest at 16:15 to keep you happy. But maybe we'll look at how the discussion goes and how active you are and how much you think you can bear this discussion. So we'll be flexible there. Very good. Without saying more than that, I think it's time for Pasi Korhonen. He's a Director of International Affairs in the Ministry of Social Affairs and Health, very much behind this event. He will be telling us some important aspects from the point of Finland, and floor is yours, Pasi.
Thank you very much, Ismo.